Today we're chatting with the extremely talented interior stylist, designer and author Jason Grant. Jason is undeniably one of the country's most influential stylists, largely due to his intuitive understanding of what makes a house a home and an exciting place to be. Rather than styling homes as a perfectionistic ideal that feels unobtainable to most people, Jason designs beautiful, relaxed, down-to-earth interiors that makes these spaces feel like absolute magic. His styling has a lived-in and nostalgic charm and frequently reflects the colours and feeling of his environment, the beautiful Byron Bay, which he loves so dearly. Jason can be frequently found on long walks with Sophia and also at cafes or shops, or working hard to care for the rainforest and the beautiful beaches around Byron Bay. So thank you so much for joining us, Jason.
Wow, thank you. That was a really good intro, and I feel like you totally get me, so thank you.
Oh, I've had you on my Instagram for a little while. It's a lovely journey to follow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's really interesting what someone's impression of me via social media is, and I guess I try to keep it really authentic. I guess it's very focused where it's not really my personal life, it's my work and my projects, and that segment of my life I kind of like to kind of like match up in real life to what people's perceptions are. And I guess yeah, I mean, I guess try to keeping Instagram as authentic as possible, but also at the same time being conscious of keeping things positive and inspiring but obtainable at the same time.
Absolutely. Yep. And I really get that feeling from your Instagram. It's almost like a little photo diary with little snippets of your life, but also like the style and the goals that you have with your work as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I myself have learned that the attempt at perfection is a really dangerous mindset to be in, and perfection for me doesn't really exist. And then attempting to create perfection is just really unachievable. And I think with what I do, I like to, not claim to be an expert. I really just share what I like and what works for me. And if that happens to work for someone else, that's great. I don't really want to ever say that this is the only way to do something. It's like how I've chosen to do it or how it's worked for me. And I guess what it comes down to is kind of, I'm really lucky that I get to live my best creative life, and that's what I want to encourage everyone else to do, is to find their own voice, their own style, their own journey, and it doesn't have to be like anyone else's. And the other kind of valuable thing that I've learned is, like, it's really bad to make comparisons to yourself and someone else. It's really important to look within and really not be comparing yourself to other people.
And maybe that's why your work resonates with so many people across the country, because what you're saying to people is be yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect, or it doesn't have to be this or that, or any kind of particular, like you say, ideal that people want to strive for, that make them lose themselves in the process. You encourage people to be authentic, and I think that's why everyone feels like they can somehow relate to your work.
Well, I think it's important for, things to be real. I don't think it's really often about spending lots of money. I think it's more about creative ideas. I mean, I work on a range of, residential and commercial projects, and then also styling for brands as well. And quite often I enjoy sometimes when the best solution is a creative solution, as opposed to just throwing a whole lot of money at something. Because I guess, working in my background in magazines, you can buy all the right things on a certain list and your space still lacks personality and charm and, I guess, a vibe.
I think like-minded people are also drawn to each other, even if it's in very subtle ways, like maybe...
Definitely, that, I mean, I guess I've always been, for want of a better word, a slight hippie at heart. And I always am very conscious of creating spaces that not only look good, but actually feel really good. And I think with so much uncertainty and so many things at the moment, we're obviously all spending more time indoors and in the spaces that we create. So making that space actually feel really great isn't always as a result of making it look great. I think the two are quite separate. And you can have a space that looks great. And, you know, in my long history of styling for magazines, I've been in some beautiful homes that have beautiful things, but have no soul whatsoever. So that kind of thing, I think, also really stems from the people that inhabit the space.
Yeah.
I recently have just worked on a beautiful cafe here in Byron Bay called Vagabond. And, you know, that opened during such uncertain times, and it's been a huge success. And whilst we were working on that space, it was really interesting because all the keywords that the client kind of like messaged to me and wanted to, you know, instill in the space, we worked really hard to create like a really good energy in the space. And it was really great to be there on the day it opened and hear people actually use those words that we were thinking of when we created the space. So yeah, I mean, it's really, well, it's not really easy to create great looking spaces, but also it's important to think about, you know, how people inhabit those spaces and how it makes them feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And there are kind of elements like materials and color palettes and size and shape and all those things that do factor into the feeling of a space, but also there is that kind of intangible element that can only be a little bit of magic, for want of a better description.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the creative lifestyle, isn't it? We get to play with that magic and make it happen.
Yeah,
love that. So how has COVID affected your work then this year, and how's your life been affected with all that?
I guess one skill that I can identify that I've always had, that I'm always pretty good at evolving. And I guess with my work, I wear many hats. You know, traditionally, and my background is predominantly working in magazines and styling for brands, be it editorial or advertising. And I guess, you know, when my first book came out is when things kind of stepped up a notch. And, you know, creating a book was like the first opportunity of actually showcasing what my actual personal style is. And with a really progressive publisher like Huddy Grant, allowing me pretty much creative freedom of that project, it really was a defining moment of like, this is who I am. And, you know, I always believe that one project kind of brings on the next thing. And with that release of the book, I then started doing a paint collection with Mirabond. It was my first collaboration. And I guess doing something like creating and designing paint colors, you know, if I was to tell someone when I grow up that's what I wanted to do, people would be like, you're crazy, but it's actually part of my job. And I've just released a new kind of addition to my collection with them. And yeah, I guess just evolving and kind of being open to things. I kind of am a fan of going, that sounds like a great idea, I'm going to say yes to that, but I have no idea how the process is. And I really enjoy sometimes creating the process to get to the end result. Getting a book deal and for a publisher to say, great, we want you to do a book, you have to hand it in 5 months. And then I'm like, right, so what are all the things involved in making it happen? And, you know, to be really honest as well, I'm never afraid of asking a question. I think I don't know everything. I'm not an expert or good at everything. So it's really important to feel the freedom to ask people questions. And I guess with working, I am mindful that I always have a really good team of people working with me, which is important as well. But now I kind of shoot content for myself or for brands that I style, art direct, and you know, photograph as well. Yeah. And it's not because I'm a control freak. It's, I guess, just being adaptable. And when you have a business that you need to do lots of things, I don't have a budget often to employ a photographer to do those things. So I guess upskilling and learning new skills, and just, I guess for me, taking photos, I've just become better at that by doing it. When I first moved into this space, I was like, I need to take a really great photo of something that I've created every day. Mm. Sometimes those appeared on Instagram. Sometimes I'm like, it's not happening today. I'm not really feeling it. But I just think the best way of learning is by doing. Mm. And the other best way of learning is by asking. So those two things are really important. And I think just, in terms of, what's happening, it's kind of how you react to that. I think it's really important. There's so many reasons to be terrified at the moment. Every day is like a different scenario. And I think with myself, I'm really controlled and limited with what news and information I allow to come into my bubble, for want of a better word. I'm quite happy to live in a bubble and just be really protective of what I allow to inhabit my space.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's a mindset, and it's not easy. Like everyone, things happen, and I guess it's fortunate that I live in a rural, regional, small place, far away from the big cities where, in Australia, we're so lucky for now. What's happening in the rest of the world where it's way worse. I grew up in Melbourne, so I feel for all my friends and family that are there, because it's a completely different reality to what I'm experiencing at the moment. Yeah. And I guess that goes back to Instagram as well. I'm really mindful of being respectful for what, just because I'm having a great day, I have to be mindful of what else is happening in the world. And I think I've always tried to approach that platform in a humble way. I think it's really easy to fall into that kind of, it's like sometimes people put a phone in their hand and their brain falls out of their head. So I think it's really mindful to think, as I said, I do live in a bubble, but I'm also respectful and remembering of other people's circumstances as well.
Yeah. And all your family and friends in Melbourne are okay? They're all safe and well?
Yeah, my family live in regional Victoria, and then, everyone else is just in lockdown and doing their best at the moment.
Because I'm from Melbourne as well. And my parents, I was born in New Zealand, raised in Europe, and then when I was 18, I moved to Melbourne. I was there for most of my life up till a couple of years ago. And then my parents decided to move, her in their 80s and 70s, decided to move to Melbourne in November. And they've moved to Hoppers Crossing, right in the hotspot. So it's like a little centre of anxiety about what's going on in Melbourne at the moment. So I like to sort of keep a little bit in the loop, but not so much that it, overwhelms my life and takes over everything,
Just to really stress you out. And I think it's important, like you said, to be aware, but also you just need to be mindful of managing. You just don't need to be watching every news service and every thing. And, there's so much fake news around, and this is more and more about kind of people's agendas, and you just have to be really mindful of not spreading misinformation as well.
Absolutely.
That also just comes from a state of fear as well. And I think, the other thing also being a slight hippie is that I actually learnt to meditate from a really good friend of mine, and it's probably besides moving to Byron, now I totally sound like a real hippie. I think just and it's another cliche thing to say, but self-care, it's really important to give yourself time, look after yourself, all those really simple things, eating well, getting enough sleep, exercising, all those things that they're actually really simple, and it sounds like a cliche, but they're actually really important.
Yeah. But if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anyone else either, whereas if you're well and you've looked after yourself and you're in a good state of mind, you've got something in the bank to give to other people.
Yeah, and I guess what we have to remember in a time of such a crazy virus that, optimism and happiness are contagious as well.
And vital.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just think, being someone that is always focused on positivity, it doesn't mean that the opposite isn't a reality as well. But I just think it's really important to, chase the light.
Absolutely. And I absolutely believe no matter what sort of situation you're in, you can find it. Like when I lived in Europe, I met people from the middle of Africa, like the Congo and other places, and their stories would just blow your mind, like amazing. And the things that I'd experienced and been through, yet they were also some of the happiest people I know. And not because it was fake, because they learned how to cultivate joy despite circumstantial evidence.
Yes. It's all really a mindset, and it's like easier said than done. And I don't want to make it sound like it's super easy, but we are what our mindset is.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe for like designers and other stylists or people in sort of a similar line of work as yourself in places like Sydney and Melbourne at the moment, do you have any sort of maybe advice or ideas on like what they could be doing with their time during lockdown?
Well, I think really you have to like listen to yourself, and it's really great to be an overachiever and learning how to bake new things or create new things, but also if it's going to make you feel good by actually being really slow and quiet, and it's actually fine to have that time. It's like really easy to like put all this pressure, and you see on social media that everyone's doing this and doing that, and how amazing is this? It's actually again just goes back to running your own race and not really comparing yourself to what everyone else is doing. And I just think and also Instagram, it's really important to like monitor that, because like you can't have like an exciting announcement every day. And I think I kind of try to just be really mindful of that as well. Like you don't have to be like constantly achieving because it's not realistic and becomes unhealthy if you feel like that every day you have to be like doing something amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question. What inspiration have you been able to draw from this year? That's probably, we've sort of touched on it a little bit, but out of everything that sort of happened with COVID or happened this year, what can you sort of draw away from it? It's like, well, that's really what I've got out of it.
I think for me, it's been a really good time to be like thinking about what's important, what I like to do, what I don't like to do, what's not important, who I want to spend time with, who I don't want to spend time with. I just think it's really important to just be, you're in charge of your own kind of well-being to a degree. And I just think it's really important to be optimistic, be like, it's okay to have a bad day and feel terrible. And I think it's important to experience and feel all those feelings. And, if I'm having a bad day, I'm always very kind to myself, and I'm like, okay, today is not going to be productive. Today I feel terrible, and tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes it does sound like a series of cliches, but they actually are really true. So I just think always trying to be optimistic is always ideal, but also being realistic at the same time. And for me, I'm really lucky that I live somewhere really beautiful, and quite often if I'm not having a great day, that's when I throw myself in the ocean or go for a walk, or even just take Sophia for a walk. It's just really having that downtime. And I have a very active mind and a very busy work life scenario, so just being mindful of all the things that kind of add up, and it's really important to look after yourself as a priority. And I guess I try to be more productive than busy. I don't really ever want to feel like I'm in a hectic scenario, and I need to be in control of that. And it's really easy to fall into being busy for the sake of being busy. I'm very mindful of how I spend my time and how I schedule my day and what is achievable. often as a creative person, I do like a deadline so I can get it all done at the last minute sometimes. But it's just, managing your time and being in charge of all those things is really important.
I really like that. I think I've sort of learned a similar lesson because we had a bit of a lockdown. It didn't go for too long. It was only 3 or 4 weeks. But I think even in that time, it was just enough to stop and go, oh, I actually don't have to live this way. I actually don't have to be run off my feet to be successful. Do you know what I mean? Like I can actually stop and take care of myself. And I've actually found I've done significantly better with slowing down, being more authentic, taking time, and sort of diving into my intuition a little bit more and putting that into my work rather than just fake it till you make it or try too hard or do too much.
And I guess there's been a lot of talk about when things go back to normal. And I think it's really important to actually think about, well, do we want to go back to normal or do we want to go back to something way better? And I think it's an opportunity to really think about what's important, how you spend your days, how you live your life, what makes you happy. And I think thinking, just not as a single person, but thinking together, and a concept of togetherness is really where it just goes back to like-minded people, and not going back to normal, but going back to something improved is hopefully what's going to happen as well.
Do you think it's forced people to really analyze their values and what they want out of their lives?
I mean, everyone's kind of had a whole lot more time to really think about things. Not everyone, I guess, is in that place where they can do that. But I think I'm kind of definitely had an opportunity to think about, what's important. I've kind of started work with a local group here, the Byron Rangers, and I, help them with beach cleans, which are not particularly glamorous. And then, they do tree planting and a whole lot of really important things for the planet. Yeah, I think it's just really comes down to just trying to be a better human, all of us, and then that's all we can do. And it's comes down to like not being perfect, but if we all imperfectly try to do things better, then that's all we can really ask for.
I think I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the chat.
Great, I love a chat, as you can tell.
What's next for you?
As I said, we've just released the new paint colours with Mirabon, so we're about to release some additional colours with the tile collection that I do with Di Lorenzo. We're just scheduling that. And yeah, just a whole lot of, like I said, a few residential and commercial projects that are always super fun. And
started this mural at home in my guest bedroom 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, which I've never finished. I haven't even got halfway with it yet.
I love of that, and weirdly, they're kind of very similar to a lot of the colours in my paint and tile collection.
I love your paint and tile collection. I was looking at it the other day and I was like, boy, it really would match our house really well, seeing as we're renovating.
Yeah, so pretty much the blue at the bottom would be Skyfall from my first collection with Di Lorenzo. Awesome. And then the pink at the top would be also from my first collection with Vampini Pink. Yeah, and the green in the middle, funnily enough, will be a colour very similar in the new editions that I think we're just scheduling when they'll launch as well. So we obviously share a very similar colour palette, but
hopefully I finish it one day.
I think, it's nice to have a work in progress, but also all the things that I kind of bring into my space. I'm very considered about what ends up in my home, and I guess often I don't really think about, will that match something else? I just kind of really just focus on, bringing in things that I love into my house.
Absolutely. That's lovely. Yeah. And it's essentially, it's you, not necessarily Byron Bay style. It's you.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for everyone to kind of have their own style. And, I like my house. It's nice that other people might as well, but it's kind of my house.
Yeah. I love that you have a bit of a nautical theme through everything, though, where it's like wherever I look, there's some little nautical reference or vintage reference. I love that.
Yeah. And also, I guess, not trying to be too cliche, but, there are definitely things that are always there's always an undertone of a little bit of the nautical going on for sure.
Love that. Awesome. Okay, well, it was so lovely to chat to you. I'll let you get on with your day, but thanks so much for chatting, and I'm very excited about your new little launch. Thanks so much. It was lovely to meet you and lovely to meet Sophia.
Pleasure.
Take care.